And I want to. Uh-oh, we got an echo.
Our chair is actually just on the upside of COVID.
I need to.
That's why it's coming from home.
It seems to be coming back around.
We got it again.
It's never gone. What,
Someone got it on the committee here? Someone's got it.
Peter Rushton.
Oh, you got it?
Okay, yeah, I think we're gonna go.
I think he's better now.
Oh,
Except I need a pen. Other than that, we're gonna go.
covered down the screen.
Good evening. How's everybody?
Hey, Peter,
Hi.
how are you feeling?
I think better by the day.
Good.
Get by, so it's good.
An antiviral medication works wonders, doesn't it?
It really did. I was impressed with the progress made by stuff. So
Well, it's good that you didn't seriously get ill.
yeah, I was very grateful.
Or seriously get it.
Who's chairing? I can't chair.
No, you can't share.
I can just sit in the chair.
Peter, are you up to running this meeting or?
I can do my best. So we can give it a try. And if we get into technical details, just because I'm here and you guys are there, just let me know, I guess.
Sounds good.
And okay. Right. Where the heck did that? All right. Where was my agenda? Oh man, hang on. Here it is. Oh, okay. So do we have a quorum, right? Because we have see 3 people present and 2 are virtual. Is that correct? Sarah and myself?
Oh, just you or virtual. Sarah is at the hospital right now with an inflamed knee.
Oh, okay. So one of us is virtual. I hope that Sarah recovers. That's for sure. All right, we'll get into it then, shall we? So Richard, are we recording? Yes.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
excellent. So welcome to the Town of Belgrade Planning Board meeting for, this is the of August. We have old business to attend to, which includes, first item is the review of the amendments to the proposed solar ordinance. And does everybody have, let's see, the letter from our town's lawyer?
Yes.
And Richard, thank you so much for sending this information around. I really appreciate it. It's very helpful. And so we have the comments from Phil Saucier here, right? And he references several areas that we need to consider. And I'm not sure if I have the best way to do this, but for me, I've got the CDRO amendment PDF, Richard, that you sent around, and also have the comments. So I was thinking we could start from the top and head down. Is that okay?
And everybody here has a copy of both as well.
Okay. So Phil's first comments deal with apparently Article 1, Section 2. We all on the same page?
Right. It's on the first paragraph of the first page.
Where he says the reference to 30A MRS 4312 can be deleted since those provisions relate to the growth management comprehensive plan provisions in state law and not ordinance adoption authority. So are we in agreement that we should delete those provisions?
It would seem to me a good idea if, one, it's not needed, and two, it could be confusing if anybody actually looked at that part of the statute.
Okay, so I'm looking, whoops.
So what is Article 1 and Sections 2 actually say?
Right at the top of the first page.
Authority,
Yes, authority.
so enabling provisions article, all that to be deleted.
No, just the underlined portion. I think Anthony put that in there for some reason. I don't know why, but. Or the underlined portion starting after home rule.
Towards the end of the
Yeah.
sentence.
Right.
So it would just end after the part which says the provisions of Title 30-A MRSA, State Statute 3001, parentheses, home rule paren. That would be period at that point.
Yep. That's fine.
Okay. So if we add clarification by accepting the town's attorney's comments here, I guess I would ask the planning board to go through the comments first, or we want to make motions for each one and then go on? How does the board feel?
Might as well make a motion for each one. I make a motion, we accept the recommendation from the town attorney to delete and the provisions of Title 30A, 4312, Comprehensive Plans Review Regulation of Growth Management Act.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor and seconded. Is there any more discussion?
No,
So for those in favor to accept the town's attorney's comments to go forward as moved, in favor. So Craig?
Yes.
Pete?
yes,
George? Yes.
And I too am in favor. So that would be 4 in favor, none opposed. Moving on to the next one is Article, Phil talks about Article 4, Section 4.1. Longer.
So Peter, this is the language that was discussed at the select board meeting.
Okay,
So what's he suggesting to do with it?
Basically amend 4.1, the expiration section, by adding the underlined section at the end there to, what's in the main body of the draft.
So he wants to add what's underlined.
Yeah,
I didn't quite
yeah.
understand.
This is exactly what the same language that he suggested at the select board meeting
Yeah,
and was
you sent
discussed.
this to me earlier. Thank you, appreciate it. I didn't really know. Thomas, really. So we're just validating it 36 months from the November 16th to 21. To November 5th. Basically, it's just covering the one permit.
Right. But it's 36 months from the date that the permit was first approved.
First approved. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with this as well.
yeah. And this talks about, at the very end, it says 36 month was first approved and may also be extended for a maximum of one additional 12-month period. So we're all good with that?
The time it was approved.
From correct.
Because that's basically what we have in our ordinance now, correct? 3 years and then 1 year extension.
Right.
So does this accomplish what we hope to accomplish in this case? It seems it does. I would be in favor of accepting this language.
I think it accomplishes what the select board wants it to accomplish.
Well, maybe that's a better way to say it. Thank you. Yeah, that's a much better way to say it. Because we had some discussion, there was some discussion at that select board meeting about impacts. So if the board is willing to accept this, I would entertain a motion on this recommendation.
I'll make a motion to accept the amended language from the town attorney for section 4, permit administration 4.1 regarding expiration.
Moved
That's second.
and seconded. Thank you. Any more discussion on this?
No,
No? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor? Roll call vote. Craig? Pete?
yes,
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor. That's 4 in favor, none opposed. Moving on to the third section, or the third area, is 7, section 5C1, citing prohibitions.
Just for everybody's reference, that starts on page 9.
Yeah, I know the prohibitions, but I don't quite understand what he was saying. So just talk about what he's saying was wrong with it. He's talking about zoning, but he's saying we can cover it in a different.
Yeah, Peter, do you want me to give
Ye-
my take on this?
Yes, if you don't mind, please do. That'd be good.
before we do that, where are we on page 9 here?
Page 9, C, paragraph C. Sort of lower third,
Transfer of ownership?
standards of approval for approval.
I'm on page 9, C, transfer of, standard of, on C, standards for approval, that's where we are?
Yeah, we're under paragraph 1.
Sitting probations?
Yes, citing provisions.
Prohibited. How do you pronounce that word?
Prohibition.
Prohibited, thank you.
So I'll give you my best shot. So my sense is from this is that, well, it really relates to the first two, A and B, where we attempted to prohibit new solar facilities in the shoreland zone and in the village and critical resource conservation districts based on comprehensive plan and the map that goes with the comprehensive plan. It lays out where those districts are. And what he's saying is that the Maine Supreme Court has ruled that in a case in Freiburg with Poland Spring or Nestle, that just relying on the comprehensive plan alone isn't good enough. You have to have a zoning ordinance, basically. And we don't. That's my take on it. But it only applies to A and B. And I believe that means C, D, and E are fine as is. I do have, Peter, when we get to it, when it's appropriate, I do have a suggestion for how we can at least address this in part. Bill Saucier suggests with respect to the shoreland zone, that we amend the shoreland zoning ordinance. And that's doable, but not doable today.
Right.
So I have a suggestion for how we can deal with part of the issue in the shoreland zone. And then I think we should discuss whether we want to try to amend the shoreland zoning ordinance in time for next March town meeting. I don't think it would be difficult. It's just that it's more complex in terms of the number of definitions that would be added and other, just the logistics of it in terms of doing the write-up and everything than we can do today. And then with respect to the village and the critical resource conservation districts, I don't have any real suggestions on how to deal with that today, since it sounds like the only way we could do that is if we adopt some kind of zoning ordinance. And that's not going to happen in Belgrade anytime soon, and
Right.
certainly nothing we can deal with tonight.
Right. Yeah, when I read Phil's comments, and it made sense to me because and zoning in the town of Belgrade. So I think what he said certainly makes sense, and I would be in agreement with that. But I was interested in what we could do, because we tried to be careful and specify and not have any loopholes where otherwise someone would perhaps try to have a type of facility that we're trying to make sure only lands in certain spots. So
With
George,
respect to the shoreland zone, Peter,
yes,
one possible approach would be later in the ordinance, on page 11, we have a series of natural resource setbacks and buffer requirements, from wetlands, streams, etc. What I thought we could do is add to that list language that creates a 250-foot buffer, or setback, I should say, 250-foot setback from the normal high water line of a great pond as defined in state statute, which it doesn't protect everything that's in the shoreland zone, but it would protect along the lake shores.
and I believe that due to our previous conversations, that was an obvious thing that we wanted to protect, was to have that setback. That'd be a very clever way of doing that, I think.
Yeah, so for example, it wouldn't prevent somebody, well, other aspects of this proposed ordinance might, but it wouldn't right from the get-go rule out somebody proposing a facility, say, within the shoreland zone of Belgrade Stream, or a large wetland, other than we have some other provisions regarding wetlands. But it would prevent them from citing one within 250 feet of the normal high water mark of Mesalonsky, Great Pond, Long Pond, et cetera.
Mhm.
And again, we're just talking non-residential solar, ground-mounted solar.
Right. So I think that'd be a very, very efficient way to use language and reference that's already in place. So case, George, what we would do is, strike C1A, but include, but append or setback language as found on page, was that 12?
11. So we could just insert that as a new A, change the rest of the numeration. And that would be the, we would limit the damage to the rest of the draft, if you will.
Yep.
But we would have to eliminate on page 9, A and B.
I see. So if we accepted the recommendation from Phil, we would eliminate A and B on page 9 under C1, eliminate A and B. But we're trying to still make sure we have something to protect the resource. And in doing so, we'd insert that basically A from page 9 and put it under under natural resource setbacks at the bottom of page 11, new A, and then renumber or enumerate from that point on.
And we would have to renumber.
That sounds acceptable. How do other board members feel about that?
I think so.
Thanks, Pete. Craig, what do you think?
So we're just rewording the shoreline, which we have other rules in the ordinance that also help that. And then we have the village districts. But we also have other rules throughout the ordinance that would help that as well. Yeah, I think we're good.
I think it's the best we can do, given.
So in one fell swoop, if we accepted this language or this recommendation, that would be striking A and B from C1 and A from that area and putting it under 7. This is down on page 11.
It would be 7, a new A.
New A, and then
And here, let me read what I came up with, Peter, to make sure everybody's good with it. So, to put it in context, 7 starts with natural resource setbacks and buffers. The following setbacks and natural vegetative buffers shall be maintained throughout the life of the solar facility from the following natural resources. 250 feet from the normal high water line of a great pond is defined by Title 38 MRSA subsection 480-B of Maine's Natural Resources Protection Act, period.
thank you, George. I believe that would work. While we're talking about it, I'm trying to think about what, well, we don't have to discuss it now, I guess, but I was just trying to think about ways to accomplish stuff going forward, but we don't need to get in the weeds right now.
Well, it kind of, with respect to what Craig's question earlier, which I didn't fully answer regarding what changes might be needed in the shoreline zoning ordinance. What Phil's referencing is the land use table, which says, like, for example, for commercial and industrial land uses, if you're in this zone, you're not allowed. If you're in that zone, you're allowed, but you need to get a code enforcement officer permit. If you're in this zone, you need a planning board permit.
Right.
And I think what he's suggesting is we add another line to that table that says basically no all the way across, that it would not be allowed in any zone within the shoreline zone, since that's already a zoning ordinance.
And that last part is the key, right? Because that's the only place where we have a zoning ordinance. That's really the crux of it. And I think it's doable. And we could, and if needed, we can, I suppose, come up with a recommendation, just like you said, George, to amend that table in the shoreline zone ordinance and pass it to Phil or somebody and say, okay, this is what we're trying to do. If we decide to go forward and do that and bring it to the voters at maybe the March meeting, it would be, just one change, but it's small but important. So. Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor for accepting the recommendations from Phil and how we propose to strike A and B, but use A later in the ordinance?
That's a good motion. The way you said it. Let's make it simplified, George.
Yeah, you want me to try, or?
Sure, try, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to strike paragraphs 1A and B from the standards of approval in accordance with the town attorney's recommendations, and add language to the natural resources setbacks on page 11 to include a 250-foot setback from the normal high water line for all great ponds.
Second.
Thank you. So move and seconded. Any more discussion?
Yeah, you got that? Who copied down that wording? You got that?
I haven't.
Okay, all right. That's my only question.
So Pete kind of read my mind because I was thinking secretary. Is that correct, Richard? Do we not have a secretary?
That is correct. Well, excuse me. Nick Poole was filling in, but he currently is ill as well. And so he has some catch up to be doing, and I'm not sure how long he's gonna be doing it for.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
Peter, we can vote on this, and then I have something to mention to you.
Okay. All right. So if no more discussion, we can do a vote. So favor, Craig,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes,
George,
Yes.
I too am in favor. 4 in favor, none opposed. And so for the group, am I thinking that will Anthony or who will be doing this revision? I guess that's my question.
So I'm willing to do it, Peter. Richard has sent me a Word version of the draft. And so, as you know, we have to get whatever we finalize tonight to Mary no later than the morning of the 2nd.
Right.
So that it makes it into the packet for the next select board meeting for them to approve, and also to approve a warrant article for November, for the election in November. And I presume schedule a public hearing. Not positive about the latter part, but anyway, I'm willing to do it. I won't be able to do it until the middle of next week, but as long as Richard's Word version that he sent to my computer at home works, I should be able to do it Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
Okay. Thanks for taking on that task. Greatly appreciated.
Well, so far it's not much of a task. I'm not volunteering for a whole lot yet. If it changes, I might reverse my decision.
Thank you very much. And let's see. That was it for comments from Phil Saucier. Right?
It is. There's a typo, Peter, that I just happened to stumble across that I wanted to, I think we need to correct. And I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. It's on page 13 of the draft in the upper fourth of the page, paragraph E that starts the extent, nature, and duration of the potential effect of the solar facilities presence on public, et cetera. And the very last line of that paragraph, in Belgrade, accessible by public road with an elevation of, it says 600 feet. That was changed to 550 feet elsewhere in the ordinance and was never changed there for whatever reason.
Oh, good catch. Holy moly. Yeah, because the next paragraph talks about 550 feet.
Yeah.
Very next paragraph. Okay. And I know we have it elsewhere too, but that's an excellent catch. Okay, great.
If you give me a moment, I think there's another one, but I can't find it. So maybe others have something. Oh, yeah, actually going back to page 9. On the same section we were discussing earlier in what was originally E and will become C. This was a discussion that was between Steve Bucksbaum of Solar Fields and the select board and us, or those of us that were there, about clarifying what land we were talking about that this applied to. And to be honest with you, I didn't catch what his suggestion was at the time, but I think a simple way to clarify it would be in the first sentence that reads, no more than 5 contiguous acres of total project area may be located on, rather than just land, say farmland, which is a defined term in the ordinance.
Hmm.
So that you may recall, he was concerned that areas that were wooded, but of soils that would be suitable for agriculture would be impacted by this, and that was not our intention.
Right.
By including the term farmland rather than just generically land, that's defined as something that's actually been producing crops for the last 5 years, or agricultural, been in agricultural production. I mean, that could be a Christmas tree farm or other things in a hay field or whatever, but doesn't have to just be corn or something like that. But so that was just a quick suggestion, if people were so inclined.
Seems to me a good idea to include that specificity rather than using a generic term. One that has reference to state definition would be good.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that conversation, Craig.
So want to use that? Does the board agree to use that term as George brought up?
So you're gonna take out prime farmland or farmland on statewide?
On the first sentence there, Pete,
So,
where it says at the end, where it says land, I would just add farm.
I'm lost as to where you are on page 9.
Page 9,
Section C,
section 1,
or section 1,
what's now E, no more than 5 contiguous acres.
okay,
That-
okay,
Later in that, at the end of that sentence, it says located on land with. I'm suggesting changing that to located on farmland with,
farmland what,
with,
with
yeah.
With WIT.
farmland,
What's the rest of the sentence?
with,
with soils defined by the U.S. Department of Agricultural's Natural Resources Conservation Services as, quote, prime farmland or, quote, farmland of statewide importance, et cetera.
So so you're basically clarifying that the reader that the agricultural code applies, in the statewide agricultural code applies.
Yeah, and clarifies that it isn't just any land, it's land that's actually in agricultural production of some sort.
Yeah, because I remember I was talking to some people at the local stores, and they brought up a point of something about farmland, and it's a state or federal law or something. I was sure what they're talking about.
Right.
The Department of Agriculture, at the state, federal level, sort of is pushed down to the state. The state laws, code, or whatever, so we're kind of bringing ours into sync with that, I think.
We're definitely bringing it in sync with state law.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask a question? Does that include tree growth?
No, it does not. Peter, I don't know if you heard the question. The question was whether it included land and tree growth, and forest land specifically excluded.
Okay.
Christmas trees, farms are included,
Gotcha.
but that's considered an
Yeah.
agricultural crop.
So are we in agreement to use that suggestion to put farmland in place of land to add that specificity in that sentence?
Yes,
Bring a
Yes.
motion.
Sure. Thanks, Craig.
I make a motion that we add farmland in front of land. I don't have a section in front of me. So I'll bring that up. Section E, on page 9. There would be reading no more than 5 continuous acres on total project area may be located on farmland rather than land. with
Yes.
soil defined further left out.
I'll
Okay,
second.
motion and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? I'm sorry, was there a comment? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Peter.
All those in favor? Craig?
Yes.
Pete?
yes,
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor. 4 in favor, none opposed. Great. Are there any other items to deal with regarding the language on this CDRO amended document?
I think so, that I'm aware of.
Okay,
I think it's a matter of just making these amend these changes and typing it up.
Yep.
What I'll do is, because this will all happen before our next meeting, I'll when I send it to Mary, I'll send it to all of you at the same time. That's acceptable.
that is. Thank you. Thanks. It's a good approach. That's for sure. Okay. If we're all set with that, let us move on to the next item in the agenda in our old business section. So next is to revisit the commercial application for the Watkins Family Farm with revisions.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Allen from A.E. Hudson here, representing the Watsons, not the Watkins, Watsons.
Oh. Thank you for correcting that. I read it from the agenda. My bad. I remembered it was
Oh, it was my bad, actually. I'm the one that typed the agenda. My apologies, Steve Watsons.
Thanks. So where are we on this? And I apologize, I missed the last meeting, so I'm not sure where.
Well, I think at the last, well, you guys could update, but I think at the last meeting, I had submitted some additional information into the town, including the revised HHE 200 for the sewer and some other information that the town had requested 2 months ago. You may have been at, Peter. It includes some information on lighting, revisions to the checklist, some small revisions to the site plan. I showed the lighting on there. And I think I requested a conditional approval for the contractor to be approved, or the earthwork contractor to be approved by the CEO prior to doing any work, rather than, I don't think they picked anybody yet to do that. So, and as far as I know, and I'm sure you can correct me, I think the application was found complete. And you wanted us to come back this month just so we could go through the finding of fact and hopefully vote for approval.
Okay.
Peter, I would just add to that, in that we have the approved application. We found the application to be complete, with the exception that Jeff just mentioned. And one other minor matter that we could handle easily. And Rich, who acted as chair in your absence, I have the signed copy right here that Richard gave me. So we have that. So and then this meeting was notified of, people within 500 feet. So we're at the stage of, I believe that's correct, right?
That's been done, correct. I think we're at findings of fact is what all we have left in that.
Yeah, so we're ready to just, we had some minor discussion about any issues the planning board might have with the substance of the application. I'm not sure whether, I suspect we should make sure there isn't more. If there isn't more, we're ready to get into the findings of fact and law. And I have the original here and I can complete it as we go through it.
Okay. Did we need a public hearing? Not to derail myself, but did you have a public hearing?
No, there won't be any. This is it. It isn't really a hearing. We just held a public meeting. That's why the notice, Jeff,
Okay,
in between meetings.
okay, yeah, that's fine. Sorry.
Right, which is consistent with our commercial development review ordinance process. So before we get into findings of fact, were there any other substantive discussion points? Just want to make sure, because George, you brought up the idea in case there were some, I don't want to overlook anything. Things substantive that we need to talk about?
Not about the application per se. I forgot. You may recall we had this discussion early on because this application also triggers the town's ancient 1978 multifamily dwelling ordinance. We had previously decided, I believe it decided that the finding of fact law could, since the criteria were very similar between the two ordinances, would that we go through today under the commercial development review ordinance would also apply to the multifamily dwelling ordinance. So essentially we would be approving this under two ordinances using one findings of fact. And probably that needs to be documented better than just, whatever gets captured in the minutes whenever those get developed. by maybe adding something to the findings of fact preface here that it's not only under the Town of Belgrade Commercial Development Review Ordinance, but add multifamily dwelling ordinance as well to the heading.
That's a wonderful idea. That way it's crystal clear to anybody who would look at the permit or the review after we get done all of this. So, good.
So do you want me to do that then, Peter? So, you know, where it says Town of Belgrade at the head top of the where do I have this?
Yes.
You know, Town of Belgrade Planning Board findings of fact, conclusions of law under the Town of Belgrade Commercial Development and Review Ordinance. I'm suggesting, and we add and multifamily dwelling ordinance.
I agree. Do any other planning board members object to that idea?
No,
No, we're all good. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Thank you. This is in some ways uncharted territory. I don't recall lately having something that would trigger that other ordinance. We don't visit that often.
Well, this is the first time since I've been on the board.
When I pulled the ordinance out to look at it, I saw the date on it and I said, there's gotta be a newer ordinance than this. So I had to go to Mary and say, is this the latest, and greatest, 1978? I was 2 years old. Wow, but I guess this is it.
that's not good.
Think so? Thanks, Pete.
I was older than 2.
Yeah, I was too.
You think?
All right, let's not get snarky.
George, would you mind leading us through the findings of fact and conclusions of law document?
Sure. So I've already completed the preface part. So project name, Watson Family Farm LLC, applicant name, Watson Family Farm Apartments, applicant mailing address, 84 Spalding Point Road, Belgrade, 04917. Name of applicant's authorized representative, Jeffrey Allen, PE, AE Hodgson. Project road location, 84 Spalding Point Road and 423 Smithfield Road, map 15, lot 8. And then application summary, project summary type, conversion of existing barn to a 3-unit apartment building with 6 gravel parking spaces and walkway. And then the next question is, was a waiver submitted? And I believe it was, and we approved it, which was for the building height.
Yes. That was approved by fire chief.
Yeah, well, his recommendation. And
Yeah.
So waiving request was submitted, yes. Date application was accepted as completed, was at our August 4th meeting. Was site visit conducted? No.
Wasn't there? 2 waivers, wasn't the distance to the house,
What was the second, Craig?
the distance from the house, wasn't that one?
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah. Yeah, this just asked at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
You're right, there's some place, I think there's a place for whether we approved it or not. Board meeting dates. Let's see.
I think
I
the
can't remember.
agendas are July.
Was that July 21st, Jeff?
That sounds about right. July 21st, August 4, and August 18.
Thank you, Jeff. Review criteria findings. Board finds that the application for the subject project is complete and the application fee has been paid in full. Application materials, site plans, supporting documentation has been submitted by the applicant and are retained in the project file. Blah, blah, blah. The applicant has requested in writing that the board waive the following ordinance application requirements. So that would be the maximum building height. Of 35 feet. No, is that right? Yeah. And separation between buildings. 100-foot separation. Buildings. The application has provided documentation to demonstrate to the board's satisfaction that the following British requirement standards are not applicable due to the proposed project size. So, yeah, supporting letter from Town of Belgrade Fire Chief.
Yes.
Next up, project, the board finds the project will not or will cause unreasonable soil erosion. Will not.
It will not.
Based on application submittals, plan dated.
The original application was submitted July 12.
Yeah, I'm gonna put July 12th and amended, right, with amendments,
Okay,
since you provided some information after that.
Yep.
And soil erosion control plan, that was definitely part of the July 12th. Okay. Board finds that the project will have an adverse impact on freshwater wetlands.
Will not.
Will not. Just write down no wetlands impacted. Board finds the project will have an adverse impact on lake, pond, or stream standards.
Will not.
Will not.
Okay, will not. Based on,
It's basically the language we've used in the past, George, based on submittal and public record.
okay, thank you, Peter, for reminding me of that.
Sure.
Based on support application materials submitted.
Mhm.
And so what I'm gonna do to just move things along is we're gonna use this wording a number of times, but I'm not gonna take the time to write it right now, and I'll do it after we're done.
Thank you.
Board finds the project will have adequate storm water management.
Will, yeah.
Will,
So,
will,
the board finds that the project will provide adequate sewage disposal.
Well,
will,
Board finds that the project is located in a floodplain.
it's not.
is not,
Right. The board finds that the project will result in air or water pollution. Will not.
will not,
Board finds that the project will have sufficient drinking water for current and foreseeable needs. Will. Board finds that the project along in or in conjunction with existing activities will adversely impact quality or quantity of groundwater.
Will not.
will not,
Board finds that the proposed activity will dispose of all solid waste in the conformance with all local regulations, and the type and quantity of waste proposed to be sent to the town transfer station will exceed its capacity. Will not.
will not,
Board finds that the project will not or will have a significant detrimental effect on adjacent land uses and properties affected by waste, noise, glare, lighting, fumes, smoke, dust, odors, or their effects. A question for you, Jeff. I always have the bad habit of turning around behind me. This gets back to the discussion we had about the decision on whether to go with a dumpster or with trash cans and where those would be located, documentation of where those would be located and how that would be screened from passersby. Would it be okay if we handle that as a condition of approval?
Yes, that'd be fine. I think we really don't know where those are going to be. I've got a dumpster area shown, but with only 3 apartments, they may opt to go with just garbage cans. If they did that, then there could be a different type of screening mechanism rather than having an enclosed dumpster, as we talked about earlier.
I'm not sure if the others will agree with me or not, but what I personally was thinking of was making it a condition that you submit something in writing or like a small sketch plan prior to the start of construction.
Okay, yes, we could do that. And if that's something that Richard could remind me when they come to apply for the building permit, because I'll never remember this.
I'm making a note now, Jack.
Yeah, like your note.
Yeah.
I'll be quite honest, I don't know how soon they're going to start work on there, so getting it prior to construction, it might be a month, it might be 3 months, it might be a year.
How did you guys feel about that? Is that okay? Pete, you good with that?
Yeah.
yes,
Peter?
same here. Yep, good,
So with that condition, project will not have a significant detrimental effect on those aspects.
Will not.
will not,
What I'm writing is just with a condition of approval. That's clarification. Next, K, the board finds the project will not or will cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions. Will not.
Will not.
Will not.
The board finds the project to the maximum extent possible will not or will have an adverse effect on scenic or natural beauty of the area, aesthetics, historic or archaeological sites.
Will not.
Will not.
The board finds the project to the maximum extent possible will not or will have an adverse effect on significant wildlife habitat.
Will not.
Will not.
The board finds the project does not conform or does conform with all other applicable town Belgrade ordinances. And interestingly enough, the multifamily dwelling unit ordinance is listed on this list. So I would say it conforms.
Will.
It does conform. Yep. And I would say if there's a way to highlight and specifically point out the multifamily one, that would be good.
Yeah. Let's see, I'll about if I write something in the here that says this application was found to be consistent with the requirements of the multifamily dwelling ordinance.
Yes.
And I think I'll add also, if everybody's agreeable, and this approval is for both ordinances.
Yes.
But
Sounds reasonable.
board finds that the project will not or will unreasonably increase the concentration of phosphorus in a great pond.
Will not.
Will not.
Board finds that the project will not or will conform to the material storage provisions of this ordinance.
Will.
The board finds that the applicant has or has not have, what? I think that's me. The board, sorry, great cramp. The board finds that the applicant has or does not have sufficient right, title, or interest. Has.
As.
Board finds that the applicant does or does not provide for safe and adequate parking. Does.
As.
Board finds that the project will not or will conform with applicable provisions of this ordinance, including but not limited to development standards for specific activities. Will conform.
Will.
Will.
Some more preamble that I got to fill in. Peter, I can't quite remember how you complete this. This is the section where we're getting to the therefores and therefore the town of Belgrade approves the subject to the following conditions, the application of Watson Family Farm LLC to develop and use the, and then there's blank as described in the review requirements above. What do you normally put in there? Is it like, is it the property address, or do you just put in the development name like Watson Family Farm Apartments?
I've put in the development name.
Okay. Okay, so then we come to the conditions of approval. The one that Jeff mentioned was something to the effect of prior to the start of construction, providing to the code enforcement officer the name and the name and number of DEP certified contractor. I have that correct, don't I, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Number one. And then number two, which I mentioned earlier in passing, I was thinking of wording something like this, and for everybody to comment on. Prior to the start of construction, a site sketch or written description of the location of the garbage dumpster / receptacles and vegetating, screening, or fencing required by the ordinance shall be submitted to the code enforcement officer.
I think that sounds good.
Okay, Peter, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that will work. And George, I have a question for you, a procedural question when you have a minute.
Okay, let me just get this down and then we'll talk about that next.
Sure.
Okay, yes, Peter.
So I just had a question. You know, when we go through the findings of fact and conclusions of law, there's like a page 2 that has a lot of stuff that doesn't apply. Did we do that one?
Are you thinking of the shoreline zoning one?
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. So the CDRO doesn't have that one then, right?
Right,
Good,
Right.
good. Thank you.
so just for all of your benefits, and as a reminder to Jeff, there are also, so in addition to those 2 project-specific conditions that will be part of the approval, there are a couple, several, 4 standard conditions approval that apply to all projects that we review and approve. The first has to do with the life of the permit, and that the permit is good for 12 months from today. But you can get an additional 12 months by requesting such by letter. The second is that, I'll just read it. The board approval of this project as described above is limited to that described in the application and depicted in the accompanying plan and other application submissions, except to the extent that the board has expressly indicated in this document that certain depictions may be revised by the applicant without further review or approval by the board. Any changes to the application, site plan, or other supporting application submissions must receive prior approval by the board. So that basically just says you're getting approval for what you applied for, nothing more, nothing less. The third one doesn't really apply. This board approval and its associated permit from the code enforcement officer, which he will do after he's received this from us, is transferable to subsequent owners. Any questions for us about those?
No, those are pretty standard. I'm all set with that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry.
It's fine, it's fine.
Oh,
I would go.
Yeah.
I would go.
You sure you don't want to sit up here with the rest of them? I guess with that, ready for a motion and a vote.
Okay, make a motion that we accept the Watson Family Farm Apartments application with the conditions as stated in the application. That's what's
Second,
Perfect. So motion and seconded. Any more discussion on
No.
this? All right. Thank you all. We'll do a roll call vote. So Craig,
Yes.
in favor, and Pete,
yes,
George,
Yes.
I too am in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed. Best wishes. on the-
thank you very much.
So, Jeff, when on other projects, have you received the findings of fact in addition to your client or not?
I haven't received anything yet, but I would like to get a copy of this after after it's all written up and signed, just so I can complete that in my file and also have that, send a copy to Mrs. Wilcox.
Okay, because that way you would have what the conditions of approval are at your fingertips.
Yep.
Okay, I guess that's that.
It is. So Rex, we don't approve the project, right? We approve that CEO, right? Issues a letter saying it's approved. I think that's the way technically it is. Is that correct?
Right. I think so. And then when I get the letter from Richard, it will include the findings of fact and information you went through tonight and those conditions.
Richard, I don't know how you handle these. I know you, only have one other of these under your belt, I believe. But it may be prudent to forward this along with the permit that you issued, because that way the conditions of approval are automatically there.
So he just needs just a written letter stating that the application was approved and a copy of the findings of fact. Is that correct?
From us to you, you mean, or?
No, I am to write a letter to Jeff saying that.
No, I think this authorizes you to issue the building permit. It's my understanding. Peter, or anybody else, please correct me if I'm
Okay.
wrong.
That's what I'm thinking.
And my only suggestion is that when you send that building permit, that this go along with it.
Yeah.
So Peter, the only thing I need to do yet is, and I'll do this in a moment while we move on, but I need to add in the application material submitted, and that's that standard language.
Yes.
And I don't know how you want to handle, I guess is a question for you as well as for Richard. How you want to handle the signing, your signature on this. If
Oh, yeah. Under these circumstances, on this date in front of everybody here, that if you, if you, George, sign my name on it, then put your initials next to it, because I was not physically present. I attended via a virtual meeting. I
right.
would think that would be sufficient.
So should I? No, not George Seal or Peter Russian, but Peter Russian and then initial.
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, that's what I did. So I guess we're good and move on to the next agenda item, Peter.
Okay. All right. So thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening, folks.
Thanks, you too. Okay. So if we are complete on that old business item number 2, let's go on to item number 3, which is to revisit the John Lynch landscaping application for completeness. And do we have that?
So if I may, I believe as we left off, the 2 things that we needed from Lynch Landscaping was the contractor's number, which is Jerry is actually a DEP certified contractor who's with us tonight. I have his number and a letter of authorization from Jeffrey Klein, which I also have, and I think that was all that was missing from the application. Unless anybody can remember anything different.
So this was discussed at the meeting on August 4, correct?
Was, yes.
And
The
so,
one that
so I was not present for that.
Rich chaired that meeting.
Okay, so should I recuse myself from this discussion then, or just facilitate, or what's appropriate?
I think the guidelines that we have on that from the Maine Municipal Association is if you've reviewed the application, even though you weren't present for the meeting, physically present for the meeting, you can continue with the application, but if you have not, then you should recuse yourself.
Okay. At this point, I would say I have to recuse myself from this application. So that means you have a quorum to proceed. It's just tight margins, right?
Yeah. I don't know, I guess you could still serve as chair though, Peter.
Okay, yeah.
Unless it would be easier for one of us to do it
Right.
on my application.
I don't think I have it either.
I don't think anybody got it. Because of those were the only two things that
Oh,
was missing, so. I figured it wasn't a sense forwarding everybody a full copy. of the application.
I have the one from last week. Or last,
Well, this is the one that we need to sign.
Okay.
The new one, guys.
Richard, I'd like to correct you, but I think you also noted the date of the sale.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
That was also in the date of the sale in the house. It's not-
oh,
Whatever
right.
number that is down in September something.
yes, September 2016.
Thank you, Jerry. You're correct.
And that's important because it's well before the date at which point the requirement for a septic system inspection went into effect.
What was the date of the sale? Again?
September 2016. It was purchased and if it was after November 6th, 2018, a copy of the septic system inspection would be required before we would
Right.
be able to approve it.
There is a copy of the PJG 200.
Yeah. So it looks to me like if we have everything we need, I don't recall any substantive issues other than the missing information. When we wait for Craig to come back, so.
And also, if you go to page 2, I think Jerry or whomever from the company typed up a little extra info as far as the retaining wall. I didn't,
Oh,
because it
yeah.
had nothing to do with impervious surfaces, I really didn't. include
No,
that in the
but
package.
Rich had asked about that. Rich Baker had asked about
Yeah,
that.
so we did include that.
Yeah.
The whole idea of permeable pavers is a new topic. So I just provided that in case anyone.
All right. Yeah, thank you. You guys are sharing an application that we, okay. We were just, Craig, what we were talking about is there's additional information that describes the retaining wall and also the permeable pavers. It looks like this
Second page.
now in the application that we did not have last time. It isn't a requirement, it's more
Just
just
add
for
information.
our,
You just passed it, Pete.
improve our understanding.
Second page.
I guess just a question of, we have any questions for the additional questions for the Mr. Lynch, or have any kind of substantive issues with the application? I do not.
I do not either, because I remember the application. There was just a couple of things that we needed. Other than that, it was pretty straightforward.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing I want to cover was the permeable paver patio, that is acceptable with the shoreline zone.
It is, it just cannot be, this is irrelevant to this application, but it's not considered, the fact that it's permeable pavers versus some other non-permeable pavers, they're both considered non-vegetative surface areas. At one point, DEP sort of counted them as 50% as if they were vegetated, and they changed that
Being,
requirement in chapter 1000.
okay. I just want to kind of clarify that.
Yeah.
However, if you'd like to change it back, we really.
No, you're talking to the wrong people.
Yeah.
You're talking to the wrong people.
There's a lot of confusion about that. I just want to.
Yeah, no, there is, and the old style, and we used to do the old style also, the permeableness is actually the spacing between, you left an inch or an inch and a half, that was the permeable part. These pavers here,
Oh,
I think.
The
you have-
center's open too.
Yeah, it actually goes right down through. If you take the paver and pour water on it, it comes right out the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's, that causes, that's a good thing, but then you have to put crushed rock underneath it so that you don't get subsurface erosion.
I don't know if any of you looked at the permeable pavers that were put in by Dave's store.
That's,
And also, I know I'm less familiar with the ones at the Lakes Resource Center that they use there, but the problem with the ones at Dave's store is it's gotten so heavily compacted over time with through and sand and pounded into it, that it's not, that rain garden below it is really what's keeping the stormwater from reaching the lake rather than the permeable pavers. And I saw a study done at the University of New Hampshire's engineering school on that, and they found the same thing. That when used on surfaces that are at wintertime use, they don't work as well with vehicle compaction, not like this where you could only have pedestrian.
and they used to put sand in, thinking that it would be permeable. That's why they're now requiring crushed stone.
Oh, okay.
So you do, I don't know,
That-
it's
that
all
would be
brand,
a
this
difference,
is
wouldn't
a
it?
brand new rodeo, so.
Yeah,
But we think that's gonna hold, but again, you got freezing, and you've got salt, I mean, it's a good try, and I can say it's a lot better than what's there now.
right,
But,
right.
In 3 years, we'll come back and
Yeah.
take a look at it.
Well, for pedestrian use, that's, shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
You have to find the best way. I think you that didn't. Shoreline zoning findings, but
Yeah, we're gonna need the
I
shoreline.
thought, I
Oh,
thought
is it here? Yes, it is here. Thank you. Wait,
And I
I
fill out-
knew that.
I knew that. Yeah, sure you did.
I guess if there's no, Peter, I guess it doesn't sound like there are any substantive discussion or concerns, so I guess we could move on to the findings of fact, and I can complete those as well, since they're in front of me.
This is the one where we skip a whole bunch of them, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, George. That would be great if you could do that.
Confused with all the mounds of paper I got here. Richard's already filled in all the preliminaries. Applicant, John Lynch, Landscaping Incorporated, address 45 Denwood Point Lane, tax map 13, lot 54A. Replace existing patio, 10 by 24 with permeable pavers, replace retaining wall and walkway. The application was presented to the planning board on 8/4/22 and 8/18/22. Conclusions of law based on the application materials, testimony, statements, evidence, documents, and other materials submitted to it. The above findings of fact, Belgrade finds that the project is or is not a permitted use. And then this deals with the land use table, and it is, in my opinion, a permitted use. Everybody agree with that?
Agreed.
Okay. We, like with the previous application under shoreline zoning, we also have to do findings of fact in law.
Sure,
It's
that's
a
fine.
legal matter. So bear with us, please. The following conclusions based on the applicable provisions in section 16D of the ordinance. One, will maintain safe and helpful conditions by a vote of the board found the standard was or was not met,
That it was met.
was met.
Do you want to do a vote or
Yes. So by a vote of, the board found this standard was met.
Yes.
Yes, was.
Yes, yes, yes. And Peter, you're recusing yourself?
I am? So that's 3 in favor, none opposed.
Does this mean if one of you guys bail on me, I'm done? I said-
You are.
Yeah, actually, it's all over but the crying.
Wait a minute, my wallet.
There's, I mean, there's not gonna be any surprises. I mean, there won't be any conditions that I've heard.
No, I'm sorry.
And so it's just a matter of us going through this form. It's gonna take us another 10 minutes, so.
Fine,
um, Will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. By a vote of the board found the standard was met.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. I am also yes, George. So by a vote of 3-0 was met. Will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater by a vote of the board found the standard
Not applicable.
was met,
One no.
was there.
was met. I agree. By a vote of 3-0, the board found
Was
the
that
standard.
wastewater?
Huh?
Was that wastewater?
Yeah,
Is that even applicable?
we had the form 2000.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep.
Yeah.
So it is
That
met.
was one of the missing things. Yep.
Yes.
Will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat. By a vote of the board found the standard was met.
Yes.
Yes,
I also am, yes, so by a vote of 3-0. Will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland waters by a vote of the board found this standard was met.
Yes.
yes,
I am also in favor, so vote of 3-0. I believe this next one is not applicable. Will protect archaeological and historic resources that is designated in the comprehensive plan. Not applicable. Everybody agree with that?
NA,
Number 7, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use by a vote of the board found the standard was met.
Is it even applicable? It's not a floodplain.
Not applicable. You good with that?
no,
Peter?
not that.
This is, now we get to the one that you were thinking of earlier regarding section 15 with the long list of standards, Peter. Is in conformance with the provisions of section 15 land use standards by a vote of found the standards met. And we'll just go down through the whole list like we normally do, identify the ones that are not applicable and decide on the remaining. Minimum lot standards.
It's almost that many.
NA, yeah, NA,
Just because it's all pervious.
So existing.
Yeah, and just.
Yeah, I would say that's applicable, not the lot size per se, but if that captures the 20%,
But does it if it's permeable?
even if you count it at what we discussed at the last meeting, you count it as being not vegetated. But it still meets that, it's much less than 20% of the lot. So I think it meets its standard, and it is out.
Oh, okay.
Principal and accessory structures, I think it meets that as well. It's an accessory structure. Campgrounds is clearly not applicable. Individual private campsites, clearly not applicable. Commercial and industrial uses, not applicable. Parking areas, I guess, would not be applicable. No parking proposed.
Right.
Roads and driveways, neither of those are proposed, so those.
So the NA, right?
Yeah. Signs, no signs. Stormwater runoff,
That'd be NA, I think. wouldn't it?
well, no, this very much deals with stormwater runoff in a positive way, so it meets the standard. Because if it was if, let's say they had a total, we're proposing a totally impermeable patio, then we would have to require something in addition to deal with the
Right.
stormwater, so. I think septic waste disposal,
That's NA. Right? Septic waste.
We have the HHE 200. So
Yeah.
I think that's applicable.
yeah, so we'll leave that in. Essential services, that's not applicable. Not planning to do any mineral exploration out there, right? So that'll be not applicable.
Oh, okay.
Agriculture, not
What it
applicable.
was before. Oh,
Timber harvesting and land management roads, not applicable. Just stop me if you disagree. Clearing or removal of vegetation for activities other than timber harvesting. I believe we talked last time about how there would be no vegetation cut. So,
That would be NA, right?
yeah. Hazard trees, storm damaged trees, dead tree removal, that's not applicable. Exemptions to clearing and vegetation removal requirements, that's
NA.
NA, yeah. Revegetation requirements, there's none required, so that's, should be NA. Erosion and sedimentation control, that applies, and they've addressed that. Shoreland stabilization, that's NA, there's none proposed. Soils, that the HHE 2000, yeah, that deals with that in terms of the soils for the septic system, so that's applicable and being met. Water quality, I believe that's being met. Historical archaeological sites, NA. And lastly, is it in resource protection, which is not, so that's not applicable. So the remaining standards that we need to vote on as having been met are minimum lot standards, principal and accessory structures, stormwater runoff, septic waste disposal system, erosion and sedimentation control, soils, and water quality. So by a vote of the board found that the standard was met based on the evidence in the record.
Yes.
Yes.
I am also yes. So by a vote of 3-0, board found that the standard has been met on the evidence. And then I don't know what people's pleasure are about this. We have a standard, one standard condition of approval for all our projects, but we have the option of removing it if we want to, and it reads as follows: manage stormwater runoff from new or expanded structures in accordance with section 15 of the Belgrade Shoreline zoning ordinance, and what that really refers to is the Maine Department of Environmental Protection's best management practices as outlined in the conservation practices for homeowners. They're basically following those practices, so leave it in or take it out, whichever.
We just have to leave it in, it doesn't really make any difference. I
Leave it
mean,
in.
It just, it's less work for us.
I'm all for that.
I'm an accommodating guy. Okay, we'll leave that in. So lastly, based on the above findings of fact, conclusions of law on 8/18/22, Belgrade Planning Board approved by a vote of, we just need to vote.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm also yes, a vote of 3-0. Shoreline application of. So Peter, do you want me to handle this in the same way in terms of your signature?
Well, I'm wondering that maybe the better way to handle it, George, would be, since you're acting chair, just sign your name and say acting chair, because it's minuted that I've recused myself from.
Oh. Yes, thank you. You're absolutely correct. Right. So, okay, I've done that. George Seal, acting chair. On the left, on the right hand side.
Correct.
So there's that, and there's that. Any questions for us?
Just to thank you for what you guys do. We're out there constantly, and you see the messes that were made, and there weren't people such as you sitting around making sure we do things. Another day, I didn't think there were any left, but we dug into a cedar pit septic system, and it was about 30 feet from the water.
what lake was that
I've
on?
done this, you know.
What lake was that on?
I prefer not to share. that.
Hopefully it was on North Pond.
Oh, no. No, I didn't realize I was gonna get in that kind of trouble. That's a good question. I'll be.
What kind of septic system? Cedar?
Cedar pit. What they did is they basically dug a hole, crisscrossed cedar logs, and then just shot it in.
Oh, just like a holding tank, so.
Yeah, but it was meant not to hold because the logs weren't
Yeah.
butted, they were just crossed.
What was the diameter? It's kind of curious.
I think this one was 4x4. The
4x4.
minute we touched it,
Oh,
it broke.
yeah.
The poor guy in the excavator was not real happy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
How deep was it?
4 feet deep.
Huh.
I think it was 4 feet wide, 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
And basically what would happen is it get in there, it would settle down and drain out through the side. And then into the lake, and the lake took it away.
Oh, that's where it
It's
was.
magic.
Yeah.
Jerry, I will finalize everything on my end for you and email copy to Olivia. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, whichever works. It doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Yeah, I'll do that on Tuesday and get that up to.
Yeah, Olivia's in the design section.
Oh, okay.
It'll actually end up with John, who made the application. He hadn't seen his kids for a while, so.
And I hope John is paying you well, by the way. I really do. Your son needs to pay big bucks just for being here.
And this is on tape, right?
Yes, it is.
is.
You can always go to YouTube and watch.
Guys, thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate
Good
it.
night.
Hope you feeling better, Peter.
Thank you very much. Trying to get by. That's all we can do.
There's a problem, I don't know where I'm looking.
You gotta look at the owl.
Take care, guys, thanks
Take care,
again.
Jerry.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for going through those things. I think we're ready to go on to the meeting minutes. Is that correct?
Believe
Actually,
so.
sorry,
Yo,
CEO update. I'm sorry.
Yeah, wow. But that's part of the meeting.
Why you buttering me up, George? So currently we have 6 applications waiting, one of which is the commercial one, the other one from AE Hudson for the pavilion at Camp Moden. And that is potentially going to be on the next board. 2 of which are incomplete, missing a permit by rule for one of them. The other one is a Adam Garland that we talked about at the last board meeting, whereas the bunkhouse he was constructing didn't meet the height requirements. He hasn't gotten an answer back from the owners as to what they want to do. So that's just waiting in the wings. And as of now, this year, between you folks and I, we have issued 97 building permits.
Wow.
And I also wanted to touch on, I didn't know if everybody got a hold of that, the Summit Solar. Is anybody,
Yeah, I brought.
Yes.
okay,
And we had that second letter too that you handed me.
yes, and I didn't even open it because it was addressed to you.
So I don't know if
you
you
want
want
to
to
address
discuss
that,
it or,
that doesn't matter. I didn't know what it was. It was addressed to the planning
yeah,
board.
somebody else voicing their opposition.
So on the Summit one, I got it this morning and he thought he was gonna be on the board tonight.
That was Claire and Diane Pepin that were.
Was that who that was? I sent an email back to a gentleman named Chris who emailed me about it, saying that it would not certainly happen tonight, as we have an agenda and it's pretty full. So that may potentially be on next week's. Their contention is that they have been in the works for 2 years on this project. Based upon your proposed solar ordinance, they will not be able to do their project. So they're gonna, I think, formulate a letter to the select board, and they're just not happy, I guess, with the ordinance, is essentially how it went down. So do you guys want to afford them the opportunity next week to talk to you, or
2 weeks.
No.
not in 2 weeks, sorry?
I don't, because I thought we made a decision that they have to voice their concerns with the select board. I thought that's what we agreed.
Well, you raise a good point, Pete, because the timeline, the remaining timeline is that, I mean, we've effectively made the last decision that we need to make tonight. And on September 2nd, it has to go into the packet for the select board meeting. And then that first meeting of theirs in September, which is I think it's the 6th, September 6th. Anyways,
Yes.
that first Tuesday, they're gonna approve it or not. And at this point, we have no reason to believe they'll do anything other than approve it based on, the 2 meetings we've already had with them. And then the warrant article, they have to go through the procedures to place it on the ballot, which includes, as you know, as a former select person, approving the warrant article language and putting it up for a public hearing, which will happen. I don't know, usually happens late September, early October, or something like that.
And that's what I just ran out, told them was that, I'll have to watch for the select board and they'll have a public hearing at some point.
Yeah. So I mean, they're hoping, clearly they're hoping, as they say in their letter, to have, to make their case to change the ordinance. And I think you're spot on that, that the only opportunity for doing that at this point in time, this is beyond the 11th hour in the process. is before the select board, not before our board.
Yeah.
So I think that might be the instruction. My preference would be to instruct them, you need to meet with the select board.
So would you like me to compile an email back to them saying that we're not going to entertain it?
Well, that's my suggestion. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anybody else.
They're asking, what are you, you're gonna send an email to whom?
Summit,
The Summit.
Summit, Solar, whoever they are, they're the ones that approached me via email and Mary as well. And asked to be on tonight's board. They
Okay.
wanted to talk to you guys. and I
Right,
said no.
so the town man, we don't have a town manager. Who's it?
We do, Mary,
She's the acting town manager?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, she can sign that document. You know, she can sign it, she can ask her how she wants to handle it. You sign it, you send an email to her,
Yeah.
to them rather, or she signs it.
Gotcha.
You guys work it out.
Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my thinking is from a process perspective is to direct any or all of these types of requests directly to the select board. I think for our purposes, what we're trying to do is adhere to a timeline. And this, we are at, like you said, George, we are beyond the 11th hour. It's not as though, Richard, just for your awareness, my own perspective is it's not that I don't empathize with their concerns. It's not that. It's we're trying to go through the process is exactly as it's been described to us. At this point, if there are concerns that they need to address about this, I would strongly recommend that they go only to the select board. And it could be that the select board hears them and says, hey, you're right. I'm hearing so much stuff. We're going to squash this. Who knows? I don't know.
So I will get with Mary on Tuesday and ask her to email them back and tell them that they need to address the select board.
That would be my opinion. I think it's with what I've heard so far. So
I mean, really, that's their only recourse at this point.
correct.
Given the timeline. And just for everybody's benefit, that second letter is from a logging company in Anson. And I'm not sure what, you know, how their work relates to solar facilities, other than maybe they do a lot of the clearing at these. And they're objecting, I think, exclusively to the 10-acre limit on the amount of woodland that can be cleared.
Peter, and both of you folks, would you just like me to read it or? how do you-
Yeah, because I haven't read the second one. I saw the first.
All right, it says, once again, this is from TR Dillon Logging and North Country Management. It says, dear planning board members, I am writing this letter to express my concerns with the proposed solar ordinance being discussed by the planning board. I've been a resident in Belgrade since 2008 and a property owner since 2005. The ordinance would severely restrict additional solar projects in the town. While some of the ordinance's measures are commendable, the acreage limit is severely restrictive. My company, TR Dillon Logging and North Country Management, owns thousands of acres of land in Maine, and a limitation of 10 acres would severely restrict most types of development. Consequently, I believe the citizens of Belgrade would be adversely impacted by being robbed of the opportunity to sell and or lease their land as they see fit. In addition, there are no state or federal restrictions that limit tree removal as proposed in this ordinance, so it's unclear as to why it's necessary to begin with. I would respectfully request that the planning board consider removing this provision altogether, or at a minimum, increasing it to a more reasonable limitation. In short, I believe many of the requirements in the ordinance put an unfair burden on landowners in Belgrade. Thank you for your considerations. Sincerely, Scott Dillon. So,
My thought is that whatever communication we have with Summit, we should also have, you know, the same communication with them and inform them if, you know, they can bring their case before the select board if they so wish.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
I totally agree. This is exactly from a process perspective to be consistent with everybody, right? To the select board.
So I will just simply add TR Dillon along with Summit Solar, or whatever their
Right.
correct name is, to Mary to address this and for it to be forwarded to the select board if those companies wish.
Yes.
I mean, you know, I mean, it begs the question of, I can't speak to the second individual, who apparently is a town resident, but the Summit certainly, you know, they knew about the moratorium. They even mentioned that, you know, the moratorium in their letter. So that means they knew that we were working on an ordinance. Why they didn't participate in the process long before this is beyond me. Yes, Steve, because he lives here, you know, has a better feel of what's going on, but they certainly had the opportunity to know, or should have known. I mean, this is a large corporation, you know, proposing a large project. You would think they would look out for their own interests, and participated earlier in the process the way Steve did. So I just don't have a lot of sympathy, to be honest with you.
Not only Steve participated, but there were other taxpayers who also participated. It was not limited to only Steve's participation. There were others that also weighed in. And
Yeah, when was that,
No.
when was that discussion, when was that meeting that, where the public did have, I didn't go to it, you know.
Oh, the public
Yeah,
information
when
meeting,
was that?
that was
July 7th, I think, or something.
or 9th or somewhere in that week.
Sometime just
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it wasn't an ideal time for sure, because it was
But it was
closer to
it
Fourth
was
of July,
advertised,
but
right? It was advertised, et cetera.
Then we sneak it in before the fourth, wasn't it?
It was like
Or
somewhere.
was it the week
Might be
before?
right.
Is that- Okay, yeah.
Week
It was
after.
closer. Yeah, you're right, that's right.
But that was advertised, et cetera,
Yes.
properly, okay.
But not that meeting though, Pete, I would want to mention, but just the process of going through the entire thing. It's not as though this has been done just, you know, or behind closed doors. It's been a very open process for months.
Well, you know, one of the things they say in their letter that's confusing to me is apparently they've already been selected through that PUC bidding process. I believe I have that correct. Or no, they just have their CMP agreement. The guidelines that, one of their objections is to the setback from deer yards. Well, that quarter mile setback comes from guidelines that Inland Fish and Wildlife did for the main PUC to use in their bidding process to avoid sites that, you know, would cause undue harm. And so I'm surprised they weren't already aware of that.
We should have. If you're in the business, you should be aware of this, as I say, the regulations, et cetera.
Anyhow, do we need to take a vote on this, Peter, or?
That's a good question. It is about process. I guess I would say I would entertain a motion. I think it's a good idea to have a motion on this and take a vote about any or all inquiries coming in at this point about this language that we're proposing. So for the ordinance. So yes, I would entertain a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to refer all refer the concerns. Give me a minute.
Sure.
I hope we refer all concerns from the public regarding the final draft of the solar farm ordinance. Have those concerns forwarded or directed to the select board rather than the planning board.
What Pete said.
Work that down.
I'll second.
Okay.
And just to make it clear, given the timeline, it's too late in the process for the planning board to take up these kinds of late suggested changes.
That's the key. That's the key to me. I mean, it's, if it were earlier in the timeline, that would be a different thing, but we're trying to get it to the select board so they could either approve it or reject it, one way or the other. So we have a motion on the floor and seconded. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor. So Craig? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Thank you. Yep. Pete,
Yes.
George?
Yes.
I too am in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Richard, thanks for handling those inquiries. Appreciate that.
And so the last part of tonight's business is basically the minutes that were reviewed at the last meeting, but they needed to be revised, and they have been by Nick.
Oh. Okay.
So I thought we already went over some.
Yeah, we did. They just needed some correction. Remember what I said, Emily Green and a guy
Yeah.
instead of a name. There were just,
So
there were
this
just
is
some
for our
small
information.
corrections in there that needed to be done, and I gave them to Nick, and he got them back, right back to me. So, and as far as I know, this is as far as he's gotten on minutes, July 7th. And he's been out of work for a week, so.
Ooh. He's got COVID. Any idea how he's doing?
Yeah, I think he's doing pretty good. I mean, he actually came to work on Tuesday. And then tested positive again, so left. I think Tuesday made his 5th or 6th day.
Yeah.
For instance, his initial testing, and so he thought he was good, but he tested again. He tested again today, and he was positive. So it's been over a week for him.
Was there a news or something else you mentioned earlier before the meeting started? Someone, you mentioned earlier, someone else has COVID.
Peter
Yeah.
Russian.
Yeah, right, okay, yes. And he's taking a new drug or something? Is there a new drug up here?
I was prescribed a medication that's an antiviral. Paxlovid.
Paxlovid.
So
Peter,
something
did you have any
beyond
trouble?
Moderna, something beyond Moderna, addition to Moderna? or-
Yeah, it's neither of those things. It's, I don't know. What else makes it? I don't know.
Was there any problem getting it, Peter? I know there was in low supplies at one point in time.
There was not. No.
That's good.
Mhm.
Uh,
So I have a procedural question, because you guys or you and Rich reviewed these last time and I wasn't part of that. Should I recuse myself from these minutes?
I'm not sure there's anything more we need to do because we approved them as amended last time.
Okay,
I just
10-4.
want,
Yeah, this was more courtesy.
yeah, I just want to make sure you had
Yeah.
a copy that was corrected.
Yeah,
amended.
no, thank you, Richard.
Okay.
And lastly, let me officially hand these back to Richard so that I'm on the record as not holding on to them.
The onus is on me.
Yes,
Gotcha.
us bureaucrats, old bureaucrats know how to cover our
I
ass.
guess so.
All right, I think, Richard, that helps us get through our agenda. I think there's more. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor? Craig? Pete?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Myself included? Good night. Thank you.
Peter, I've been waiting all night. Do I get to slam the gavel?
You can. Thank you. Yay.
Hey, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a great night, everybody.
Hey, hope you get better soon.
Yeah.
Brian.
On the mend.
Thank you.
When did we get the gavel? I haven't seen it.
That's the select board thing.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a select board thing. I guess
We borrow that every time we have a meeting now.